in short, I think it was a lot of failing and falling and learning, that got me here. I had several roles and positions, in my career that I'm sure a lot of people could relate to, where you join an organization, maybe you're a minority, maybe you don't have experience working in a corporate space or in the type of environment or within the culture that business has. And yeah, you have to get things wrong. And I think today, one of my, favorite things to do is to fail, get it wrong, but remain curious. So I think I've always been a curious person, and someone who's passionate about evolving and learning and growing and developing. But that also takes, I think that also requires you to be humble enough to know that you don't know everything. You're always going to learn. There's always somebody to teach you things. Oftentimes they're younger than you, less experienced than you, but there's so much to learn from.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host, and our guest this week is the amazing Ayos Ogunde.
Correct.
Got his pronunciation right?
Yes, Ayos Ogunde.
Okay. And Ayos is a director of strategy and innovation for TMP Worldwide.
Yes.
TMP Worldwide. Okay, which I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit about that later. And I'm really excited today because Ayos has an incredible story. And Ayos, welcome to Against All Odds.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you also for making this happen. And I've really looked forward to this.
Same.
For quite a few weeks. So Ayos, how does one make a transition from a degree in engineering to becoming a director in a brand marketing space? How does that happen?
Yeah, it's I think an interesting story. So when people ask me and I talk about my journey, I always say I think I've had a very interesting experience in that, I decided to study engineering because my dream as I was young was to build spaceships for NASA.
Oh, wow.
And so my dad told me, well, sweetheart, if you want to build spaceships for NASA, you're going to have to learn a lot about engineering.
Okay.
And I think I was very young when he told me that. And, when you're young, you latch on to these things. And so I knew I had to study engineering if I wanted to get into space or want to build spaceships for NASA. And that's what I did. And during my course, which, I will give away my age a little bit by telling you what was happening at that time, on my module, we had a module on my course that was all about Flash, which is like a tool that we used to use back in the days to edit and as part of like website development and website building. And so we had this project and it was to build a website using Flash. And I spent a long time playing around with Flash and developing this piece of thing, whatever it was. And I was like, this was great, this was really fun. And I got really, really good feedback from my lecturers that was like, this is great, you have a real skill here. And so I went on to continue creating things in Flash. Then I started charging people for creating things in Flash. And then I was asked to build a website for somebody. And I was on my course, so at uni I didn't have a job, but how I made money was by building websites. I was editing things on MySpace for people, and that's what I did.
Okay.
And so I think at that point I got quite distracted with the internet. And I thought there's something here, on Earth that is very interesting to me, and I knew I wanted to explore it. And so after my degree, after I studied, I went on to work for a range of companies that were doing web development. And during that time, as much as I loved it, I think I had this realization that I have way too much main character energy to be in the background. I want to see how people respond to what I'm creating, and I want to be involved in that journey. And so that was when the transition happened from engineering/web into digital marketing, social, and everything that I do now.
Mm.
So that's kind of the short,
the short
mid to
version
short.
of it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's quite interesting because it almost sounds as if you stumbled upon this path semi-accidentally, because had you not had that project,
Yes.
and had you not had that opportunity to explore, and find that you had a flair for it, perhaps you might not have, taken it further, and also the fact that what you're doing now is in the creative space, suggests to me that you had those creative attributes, which is probably a bit different from a straitjacket engineering kind of mindset, and even the way you come across, you sort of like, I can see that you're in your element.
Yes. I'm in my element. I love people. I think I'm a people person, and so that was the thing about the web world and the engineering world that was different. A lot of the people that I interacted with on my course or like in the space, they were often solo workers, independent thinkers, and problem solvers, and that's a big part of my personality. And even at work, I often say I get all of my great work done when I'm alone in deep work, getting on with it. But fundamentally, I love people, and I love meeting people and speaking with people and interacting with people, as you've seen, like with my colleagues and people I work with, having those relationships. And so that's why I think I had that realization came, that I want to see how people respond or react to whatever it is I'm creating, because I do feel like I'm a creative person, and I want to create, but I also, maybe is it narcissism or what is it, that makes me want to see that response, and then I can learn from it, and do something there.
But then just to dovetail into that a little bit, I mean, to get to the level that you are now, tells me that you're good at what you're doing. So what I'm trying to understand is, how did you gain that level of competence? I know you said you worked in various places, kind of trying different things, but then it's one thing being technically competent and being creative and doing things. It's another thing getting to the point where you're a director, where you're influencing strategy. It's a completely different ball game. It's a completely different conversation, and it's a completely different set of skills that you need to bring to bear. You need the technical stuff, but then you also need the people side. As you say, you're good with people and all that. So was there anything that you'd say that to somebody who's watching about maybe a work ethic or something that you did? Because I don't believe that the transition just happened.
No.
I think I'm a bit too old to believe that, right? There must have been, there's substance to this story. So I'm just trying to see what that substance was.
Yeah, of course. And in short, I think it was a lot of failing and falling and learning, that got me here. I had several roles and positions, in my career that I'm sure a lot of people could relate to, where you join an organization, maybe you're a minority, maybe you don't have experience working in a corporate space or in the type of environment or within the culture that business has. And you have to get things wrong. And I think today, one of my favorite things to do is to fail, get it wrong, but remain curious. So I think I've always been a curious person, and someone who's passionate about evolving and learning and growing and developing. But that also takes, I think that also requires you to be humble enough to know that you don't know everything. You're always going to learn. There's always somebody to teach you things. Oftentimes they're younger than you, less experienced than you, but there's so much to learn from. Early on in my career, I remember I worked for a company, and I'd been there for about 2 years, and I was always very ambitious. I think I've just always had that thing. It's the Nigerian, Nigerians.
I was going to come to that.
We'll get there. The Nigerian in me, just super ambitious. You don't know where that thing is, but you got to keep going. And so I was really ambitious, and I remember thinking, I'm doing great here. I've learned so much, and part of to one of your questions earlier about how you grow and get to that position or get to where you're trying to get to, is even in like the self-learning. So that story about Flash, I learned how to use Flash myself. I learned how to code by myself. And so when I went into businesses and I had this skill that was rare for somebody who could also design something, but then she could edit code, or she could speak to the developer and say, no, you just need to edit this line of code and that's going to fix it. That felt like a superpower. So I think going from, you know, one company to the next company and the next, and that curiosity to learn, to evolve, to not be afraid to say, I've been here for 2 years, I think I've taken what I've got, and confidently going, I need to go somewhere else to get something else and to learn something else and to grow. And I did that throughout my career quite unapologetically, and every time I'd go into an interview and they'd say, you only stayed here for 1 year, or you're only there for 2 years, and I said, yes, correct. And that was it. There was no explanation. I never explained myself. It was just time for me to move on, because I was focused on getting what I needed to get and move in the direction I needed to move in.
Okay. So going back, right, just to put this in context, obviously growing up in the Nigerian home, with parents of Nigerian origin, I started this project actually by accident a year ago. I was just telling you before the camera started rolling. And in the past 11 months, I've interviewed some really amazing people, I must say. And I'm also a people person, as you can tell. And one thing that has struck me is that a very high proportion of the high achieving Black, Asian, minority ethnic people are predominantly from Nigeria. Okay, I can't explain it. If I take 10 people that I've interviewed, I'd say 9, okay, easily 90% are of Nigerian heritage. Okay, and I was talking to someone the other day, at a networking event, and I was talking to a guy called Henry Odogu, he's a managing director at BlackRock. Okay, again, Nigerian. And then there's another guy, Chika, he's a football agent. And someone said to me, I think it was Henry, he said that Nigerians don't have the concept of a glass ceiling. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. So maybe, can you just tell our viewers a little bit about how it was like growing up, you know, in your home? Were there any lessons that you learned? Was there something cultural that, you know, sort of picked up to push you?
I mean, I think that Nigerians are brilliant people, right? I'm biased, of course. I think Nigerians are brilliant people, and I think there is, and I never lived in Nigeria, by the way, but I think that there's something fundamental in the Nigerian belly that just cannot be tamed or can't be removed. And I think there's you know, when I visited Nigeria once, I think I was 16, and I remember just kind of looking at my people and kind of like, everybody is working hard. Like whatever they're doing, they're working hard at it. Like if you're a hawker, if you're on the Okada, whatever you're doing, they're working really, really hard. And so I think in the mindset of the Nigerians I've come across is this, like, you keep going and there's no stopping, there isn't a glass ceiling. Anything you want, you can have. And for sure, my parents instilled that in me. The idea that's why, you know, when I was a child and I said I want to build spaceships for NASA, my dad didn't say that sounds ridiculous, or okay, why don't you go and be a doctor or a lawyer or something else. It was, yeah, okay, go for it. You can go to the moon. There's no there is no glass ceiling. There's no limit to what you want to do. And I think that, you know, my dad, for example, he was he is, even till now, very much a music man. So, you know, he plays a lot of instruments, and that's his passion. And I think even at like 50 to 60, he'll pick up his bass guitar and that's what he loves to do. And no one is going to be able to tell him that that's not something to do, or don't do that. So, you know, I don't know that there were, you know, explicit examples of like my parents instilling or directly instilling, but there were definitely a lot of stories. You know, my dad used to tell this story. This is not really about the resilience part, but it was about the lion and the bull, and that was about humility. So being humble, which, depending on the Nigerian, maybe. I think a lot of Nigerians are very confident people. that's probably, you see that probably a bit more than humility, but my dad did always teach us to be humble. And the story with the lion and the bull was that this lion was hunting for prey, and he was being very sneaky in finding his prey. And when he finally came across this bull, he devoured it, he ate it, and then he ran to the top of this mountain and started roaring and roaring and roaring. And then the lion was shot by some hunters because of that roar. So the moral of the story is, when you're full of bull, keep your mouth shut. And I love that, just that lesson that, you know, at that moment of glory, be humble, keep quiet, and just keep going so you can capture more bull.
It's actually quite interesting that you talk about it. I wouldn't say that it's arrogance, or the confidence sometimes might come across as arrogance, but I actually think it's assertiveness in a certain way. You know, some people might not like it, but it's a certain, I think it's assertiveness. So can you just tell our viewers, you know, perhaps what you think about the importance of being assertive, you know, and being a go-getter? Because I think that anybody who's gotten to the level, I mean, we've recently become acquainted, you know, but I can sense that you're somebody who, when you decide to do something, you go for it. You don't mess around, you know, and it's a mindset, and that's what I'm trying to get across in this podcast. That mindset of resilience, that mindset of, failing forward. You talked about failing and picking yourself up. That mindset of not giving up. That mindset of excellence, doing things and doing it well. You know, because I watched even the prep for this shoot, you know, and because I wasn't, normally we have the shoots in a studio, you know, we have to do a different arrangement now. But then I could tell, just looking at the preparation that you'd done, that, you know, you thought about it and you kind of applied yourself. And these are little things that are subtle, but are important. Somebody who's watching might not have thought about it, you know, and that's what makes the difference. So can you just tell the viewers a little bit about that attribute? Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I think that, let me go back, hopefully we'll cut this bit.
Sure.
But I think the point you made at the beginning or earlier in the question was like about the a kind of assertiveness. So it was about like being assertive, and again, I think it's learning. So I think if you're somebody who's curious and you learn and you observe and you watch things, early on in my career, I learned a lot of things. I learned that there are different rules, invisible rules for different people, depending on who you are, what you look like, where you're from, the accent you speak in, the way you walk, the way you present yourself. And my first, what I'd call real manager, because the other roles that I had prior to this real manager were a bit like all over the place, just ad hoc, and I just was a lone ranger, able to do whatever I wanted. But I worked with this amazing woman who I'm really, really glad I got the opportunity to work with. And I watched her, and she was an Irish woman. The way she walked alone, I was walking down the street with her one day and people just moved out of her way naturally. She was a very friendly person, but you didn't mess with her. You didn't ask her a ridiculous question. Like you knew what to go to her with and what to not go to her with. And she carried herself very well. She walked with a grace and an elegance and a confidence, and she spoke with purpose. She didn't speak too much. She said what she needed to say. And I think I observed her and I thought, wow, in comparison to other men and other women in this business, this woman, she gets what she wants. She's kind, she's nice, she's respectful, but she is assertive. And I think I learned, again, through other experiences, that there is a way to get the things that you want. And I think you have to respect people, but you need to ensure people respect you. A big piece of advice that I often give to like family and friends is don't get too comfortable. Again, it's because there are different sets of rules, and they're invisible even to the rule makers, I think, at times. So you can't be too comfortable or too open or too free in the workplace. And I think even more so as a black person, even more so as a black woman, there is I think even the idea or the conversations about limitations and ethnic minorities and things, as a Nigerian, that is not an issue. Like, that's the mindset. Like, we know, of course, we can see and we can hear, but it's like, well, I'm going to persevere, or I can move through that, and that's not going to be an issue for me. And, going to apply for a position or going into a room and knowing that you are the person or the one that can get that job done. And if you're not hired, that's okay. They weren't ready. And then if you are, delivering and making sure. Actually, I just thought of another thing from one of my earlier roles. I joined a company and there was a particular skill set that was absolutely mandatory that I was meant to have, and I didn't have it. And I said, I can do it, I said. And I think it's not an issue, and I say this to people sometimes, if you go into a new position and you don't know how to use X tool or you don't know how to do Y, but what is important is that on day one, you do know how to do that thing you said you know how to do. You don't want to overpromise, underdeliver, especially at the beginning. So I think I've gone a bit round in circles about things, but I guess for me, the assertiveness has come from me watching and observing and seeing other women do that early on in my career, and then being courageous enough to start walking that walk and asking for what I want and being comfortable with hearing no. You're not always going to hear yes, you're not always going to get the answer that you want, but getting comfortable with that and being okay with it and moving on to the next thing very quickly.
So one thing you just touched upon was the fact that it sounds like you had this lady who mentored you, okay? And I've found in conversations with high achieving people like yourself that inevitably most people have had someone who kind of held their hand, or maybe not even held their hand, but somebody who they had like an aha moment. It's like, oh wow, okay, maybe this is the way, I could also do it. What can you tell our viewers about the relevance of finding mentors and people who will sponsor you? Because there are conversations that at the level that you are now, there are conversations that will go on, without you being present. But then if you've got a sponsor in there, that kind of helps. And I think that, if people could sometimes learn the importance of cultivating some of these mentor-mentee relationships, it could help. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you have a voice at the table when you're not at the table, that's always going to be in your interest. I do think that a lot of young people that I speak to talk about wanting a mentor, looking for mentors, and not knowing how to find a mentor or how to approach that. And the mentors that I think I've had in my life were accidental, or they didn't know they were mentoring me. But they were, as in, again, if you're a curious person, then you're asking a lot of questions. Your mentor doesn't realize they're mentoring, they're just responding to you, and you're learning from them. And I think that it is very important if you join a business, or I'll use examples of joining a business. If you join a company looking for a person quite quickly that you think there's something there and I don't think there's any shame in saying I want to emulate that, or I want to understand how to cultivate that in myself as an individual. I want to learn from that person. And even just as small as I've had, even when I joined this company, a person that I really looked up to, and I was like, this person. So it's that constant, you're always going to evolve. And all I did was make sure that I always had, every week I just put a 30-minute catch up. That was my inadvertent way of getting mentorship, was finding a way for me to have 30 minutes every single week with this person. And again, they didn't realize that they're mentoring me, but I took that opportunity to ask questions and to learn a bit more about their journey and how they handle certain situations. And there's no shame in that. So I definitely think it's important. Those people, especially when they're senior to you, will make space for you in other spaces, or think of you and drop your name when somebody's looking for someone with your skill sets, or someone who can do what you do.
So Ayo, what inspires you? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a tricky question. It's a tough question. Because honestly, life inspires me. Life is what inspires me. I'm human, so there are days, of course, I wake up and I'm like, oh my goodness, that feeling. But it's very easy for me to quickly say, there are these opportunities in life to eat up or to experience and to go. So get up and go. I think just life. I think there's so much in life, so much to life, so many questions, so many things to do and to experience that excites me, and it motivates me. And then even my work, it inspires me and motivates me. So I am someone who is very passionate about the evolving digital landscape, what is happening with technology, and then how that impacts our behavior as humans. I think all of those things I'm curious. So those things interest me. And then outside of that, my family. I am one of four. I'm the eldest of four. My mum and dad, my dad lives in Nigeria, my mum lives here, and I love them and I'm excited by them, and they are motivation to go and to do and to be, and I have a loving partner who inspires me and motivates me. So I think there are so many. It's almost like, what doesn't inspire me is probably more so the question, because I can find beautiful, wonderful, inspiring things in many things.
Okay. Okay, that's pretty good. So in terms of what you do now, where do you see the impact of, everybody's talking about AI these days, and what would you say having an AI skill set could do, could help somebody who probably wants to get into a creative space like you are currently, Is there anything that somebody who's watching this can do to help the chances of coming to an environment like this, with that skill set to help in a certain way?
It's a good question. I think probably the first thing that comes to mind for me is just early adoption of anything. So whether it's AI or it's a new social media platform or a new way of doing things in digital, the sooner as an employee or as somebody who's looking for a role, the sooner you get familiar with new technology, new platforms, I think the more you can quickly add value to yourself, or interest to yourself as a candidate. For example, for me, the moment ChatGPT, Bard, Midjourney, whatever it is, once those things launch, I just get on there. And I think just having the curiosity to understand how they work. It may be that it's something that has no relevance whatsoever to your job or to your life, but at least you've gone to find out first. Often I have conversations with people that's about, I'm not interested in TikTok, or I'm not interested in ChatGPT, and I say, why? Oh, because it's silly, or because TikTok is for kids. Have you been on it? Have you opened TikTok yourself to see what's on there? Because if you see kiddie things, that's questionable, because the algorithm is obviously working in line with what you're interested in. So I think just being more open-minded is really essential. But specifically to the AI skill set, I see AI as something that's going to support all of us individually and in the workplace, in working more efficiently, in working faster, smarter. So to me, if you're getting familiar with using the platforms that are available now to support you on a day-to-day basis, you're going to deliver your work more efficiently, faster, and you'll be first to be doing that. And so there are times that I may have a project that has to be delivered in a ridiculous time frame, and I use every new tool that gets launched. If it's a startup or whatever, I will go and I'll get it and I'll use it, and I find many ways that those things can support me in getting to the destination that I want to get to faster. So that would be my advice, is be an early adopter, use new tools, use technology, see how they can improve the things that you're already doing. And then, when you go into a job interview and they're asking you about some of your skills, you can talk about how those things are working effectively for you. Yeah.
So thanks a lot for that, Ayos. So somebody's probably watching this and wondering what you do for work.
Yeah.
Okay, and probably also how maybe they could also benefit from your services. So if you'd like to pitch to anybody who's watching.
Oh.
You weren't expecting that,
I wasn't expecting that. But so fundamentally, I'm a strategy director. I head up our digital and social, the digital and social work that we do for a lot of our clients. And by clients, we at TMP are effectively an employer brand talent advisory agency. So all that means in simple terms is any comms agency you would typically come about that may work for consumer brands in that respect. We do a lot of similar work in terms of brand work, marketing, advertising, outdoor advertising, paid media, all of those things. But the focus is more so on an employer brand. So as opposed to come and buy loads of shoes, it would be come and work for the company that makes all the shoes. So we focus more on attracting talent into organizations, and we do the marketing around that. And it's interesting because this is a very new world for me, because obviously my background has been digital, strategy, social, but it's always been in the consumer world. So I worked for an agency previously that, we worked for the likes of Netflix, Formula One, David Beckham. It was all the consumer world. And so I've only been in this employer brand space for the last year. But what's really interesting about it for me is it's something new. So there's so much for me to learn. So that's that thing again about the growing, evolving, and kind of expanding your knowledge base beyond the things that you're usually familiar with. So the pitch is, if people are looking for employer brand support, recruitment marketing support, ways to attract talent into their organizations, then that's what we do. And we use all the most advanced and new emerging technologies. That's why I'm here. It's to do that in the most innovative and creative ways.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that. Soft skills. What soft skills would you say would help somebody probably watching in a senior level, to progress?
I think there are quite a few, aren't there? There's a lot that stems from being able to develop relationships, and that's like up and down. So managing up, managing down, but also I don't know if you ever read or heard of radical candor.
No, I haven't.
It's kind of like a way of working. So it's about being radically candid, so being super, super honest, and it goes both ways. So your team, the people who report to you, are able to say, what you just did there, that wasn't in the best interest of this business. I don't agree with your idea. I don't agree that that's the best thing for us to do. And there's no offense taken, because it's easy to do that when you're doing it down, right? But receiving it is not as easy. But it's something I believe in radically, when you give space to people to feel comfortable to come to you as their manager and say, actually, I don't agree with that. Or you say, oh, go off and do this. Oh, actually, I think this is a better thing. I think what you find there is you get high-performing, autonomous teams that feel really empowered and confident because you've given them that trust. So I've gone off on a bit of a tangent because we were talking about the radical candor. But in terms of the soft skills, I think that kind of ties into it. So with my seniors, or senior leadership, I try to be really transparent, and I try to be radically candid and honest and open about my thoughts, respectfully, of course, and always. But that honesty is something that I hope that people know they'll get from me either way, but also for people to know that door is open from me, and it's always received with warmth and and it's welcomed to have that. So I think soft skills are around having relationships and being respectful to everybody, and for people to just feel comfortable
around you.
Comfortable around you. I think having a critical thinking, I think that's important. I think it's something that's a bit underestimated. So in different circumstances, being able to assess and think about the best course of action to take or how to handle that, also being empathetic or being able to adapt to different personality types and things of that nature. But ultimately, and I feel like I've repeated it a few times, but curiosity, I think, is a soft skill that is super underrated, because I think when you're curious, when you're curious, you're open. And I think being open and open-minded and not fixed or locked into a view or a perspective or a way of doing things, I think offers like so many opportunities for you in many ways.
Great. Would you consider yourself, we're just coming up to the end of the interview, would you consider yourself Nigerian or British?
Nigerian. I'm British because I live in the UK and I've been raised in the UK, and this is where I've grown and developed, and everything is with. I've never lived anywhere else. But when people ask me, when people ask me anytime, anywhere, I say I'm Nigerian. My dad is Nigerian, therefore I'm Nigerian, and I think that's effectively it. Is that feeling, and I really have I think an internal mission that is not one that I think about on a day-to-day basis, but I recognize when I look internally that I want for people to like have experiences with me and meet me and have a very good feeling or very good impression of Nigerians, because there's a lot of like bad rep out there, with Nigerians and things, as we know. So I think I have this inner mission that's like, I want you to have an experience with me and be like, damn, Nigerians are cool, they're interesting, they're open, they're warm, and they're successful, and they want to do great things. So I'm Nigerian.
All the above. Okay, one last question. So as you progress in your journey, did you find people who look like yourself in senior levels, or did you have to kind of navigate your way?
I never saw it, not once. I've never, till this day, worked in an organization that afforded me the opportunity to see a black man or a black woman in leadership, whether that was directly somebody that I reported to or somebody that was in the senior leadership team. I never, ever experienced that. And I wondered why. I did question it. I always thought, that is so strange. Clearly it's not just me that's very talented in this country. No, seriously, I really did wonder why that was. And I'm privy to the fact that I think there are barriers. I hear about it and I see it. There are definitely barriers. I don't know what the answers are to those things, but what I do know is that the people that I work with, anybody that's ever worked with me, my job is to accelerate them beyond where I managed to get to, especially young black women. Like that's goes without saying. If you work with me and you're a black woman, my moment of success comes from when you're in a role that's more senior to me, and that's what I want for you, because I would love for the next generation to see that a lot more, rather than when I do meet black women and coming into an interview and they say, I've never interviewed with a black woman before, or they wonder if I'm the hiring manager as opposed to, or someone in the recruitment team as opposed to their potential manager. Yeah, I want that to become more normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. So, what do you think about this podcast and what we're trying to do? And I know you're not expecting this. I didn't prep you for this. Why did you agree to come on this podcast?
Well, I saw some of the past episodes, and you mentioned it earlier that you said, it's great that we get to see all these stories of these successful CEOs and multi-billionaires. I am not one of them, FYI. But I am also very interested and curious to understand more about the journeys of normal people who have been on a journey, are successful, are doing well in their lives, but maybe that they're not a Richard Branson or I don't know, whoever else it is. I think those stories feel much more accessible and relatable because they feel closer. So I was interested and happy to kind of be part of this, to share a little bit about what I do, but also to it's a bit cliche that, well, if I can get to a place that I wanted to be and I didn't know that it was where I wanted to be, you know, when I was younger, I thought I was going to be building spaceships for NASA. But I'm doing work that I love, I really love. I'm happy, I'm blessed, I'm grateful. And everybody should be able to have that, you know, as a minimum. But we don't have to be multi-billionaires to feel that, to be happy. Fulfilled, yeah, to feel fulfilled. I think that fulfillment you can find fulfillment in your job, doing the things that you love, working around great people. And I think I'm quite fortunate to have that, where I'm working with great people, great brands, and doing work that really stimulates me every day. So if I can share that story and people can relate to that, that makes me happy.
Would you say that would be your definition of success? To be happy, to be fulfilled, to be doing something you love doing?
Absolutely. I think that feels like I feel very successful, and it's not because of a bank balance or a job title. I feel successful because I think I've found a balanced place where I am fulfilled. I'm motivated every day, and like I said, as a human, I wake up some days but generally I love to wake up, and I love to do the things that I do on a day-to-day, and I'm happy.
Fantastic. We have a tradition on this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate the episodes they feature on to anyone or any group of people of their choice, and obviously not 100 people, right? Yeah. So who would you like to dedicate this episode to? And you can look at the camera for that.
Okay, creepy. I would dedicate this episode to 10-year-old Ayos Ogunde, who had absolutely no clue where she was going to end up, you know, in life. And I would love for 10-year-old me to be able to sit and watch this episode and to watch that reaction from me as that 10-year-old. And I would love that feeling. I've got goosebumps thinking about it. But in addition, I would also like to dedicate this episode to every young Black woman who's trying to figure it out, who is concerned, who doesn't really know what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. I dedicate it to them.
Fantastic. Ayos, thank you so much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I've learned so much, and I'm going to sit back and watch it over and over and over and over again. You know, it's just been an amazing conversation. Very authentic, very genuine. You come across that way, and
thank you.
It's like I said, it's for me. It's been an exciting journey this past year. Just get to meet people like yourselves, because it's just very energizing. And I hope that our viewers can feel that energy, that positivity. That it doesn't matter where you start. You know, with the right mindset and with some decisions and some intentionality of what you're doing, you can succeed against all odds.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd like you to subscribe. Our subscriber base is growing, but also many people who just watch, don't subscribe. We want to build a platform, not for me, but for ourselves, so that we can showcase stories like this, because the bigger the platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So please subscribe, like, share, and comment. And Ayos, thank you so much. Were you going to say something?
I was going to say something. I was going to say,
go for it. Don't
be selfish with your likes. You know, today, we were talking a little bit about social media earlier. We've become very selfish with our likes and subscribing and interacting. And if you have watched this episode through to the end, do the right thing. Subscribe, like it, share it with somebody who you think would benefit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.